Ghoulies, here we are. We've got a great interview tonight. Pearl has joined me, Donald, and Bradley the Gorilla. And anyway, this is Donald Glut.
Lovely to meet
He's
you.
well, he's worn many hats in show business, but
Yeah. No, I never had hats like yours though.
yeah, okay. But we kind of want to talk a little bit about my, it's one of my go-to movies now is Tales of Frankenstein. I really, really like it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I really enjoyed making it. It was a labor of love for me. So,
I mean, you really did some creative things. The Franken vampire, for instance, I thought that was pretty clever. And of course, Lily Lev in the first story, really cool. And of course, you got a gorilla suit in the movie, which I think
yeah. I love gorillas in movies. Gorilla suit movies are among my favorite genres, subgenres, if you want to call it.
I know there's a Facebook page, Ape Suit Cinema.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many, well, I don't know if they were short on a monster and the gorilla suit was available, like Hillbillies in a Haunted House, I think has a gorilla in it.
Well, that gorilla suit, the George Barrows gorilla, I'm a volunteer at the Natural History Museum here in Los Angeles, and we have a film collection, and one of the things in the film collection is the George Barrows gorilla suit that we use in Conga and Black Zoo and a lot of these other things. And it's seeing it, just the head in a box up close was really a cool experience, I got to say.
Absolutely. I didn't know that was the suit they used.
Absolutely.
What's that?
You mean absolutely.
You get it? Get it?
No.
No, that was like
it's over my head.
Oh. Dang, man.
But very, very interesting. And you have been a big fan of Frankenstein. I think you've even done a painting of yourself as Frankenstein's monster?
I'm sorry, what?
Didn't you do a painting of yourself as Frankenstein?
Yeah, I did. What I did was I wrote a series of novels, and I described the Frankenstein monster in my own way. That was a little bit Universal, a little bit Hammer, but other things to avoid copyright issues, And I did a painting where I took my face and I just built the monster's makeup, if you want to call it that, over my face, and I still have that painting.
Yep.
Nice.
So you've been involved a long time, and then you decided to make Tales of Frankenstein for the anniversary of Mary Shelley.
Yeah, in fact, we shot one of the episodes on her birthday, and we all paused and wished her happy birthday and everything. So that was very nice, and that was kind of interesting because we didn't have a cake or anything. We didn't have the budget in our film or the time to get one, but I think we sang happy birthday.
Right. I remember that's how I found out about you, is I saw a picture of your version of the Frankenstein monster just randomly on the feed. And then I was like, I got to get a hold of this guy.
Well, I wanted to make a movie that was kind of old school, kind of retro. I wanted to have all the old tropes, villagers with torches and brain transplants and all that kinds of castles and all that. And I didn't want to do a remake of the original story because everybody does. And then now there's the new version, the new movie that just came out, won a couple Academy Awards. And I didn't want to do a spoof. I wanted to do something that was the fans would like, the fans of the old Frankenstein movies from Universal and Hammer and those kinds of things. And it was a lot of fun doing that. We started, I got the idea about 2 years before we released it because I wanted it to come out for the anniversary, the 200th anniversary of the novel. And that gave me a lot of time to plan things and so we weren't, usually I'm really rushed when I make a movie, but this time we had a little bit more time to relax and take things a little bit slower. We were still rushed. I won't say we weren't strapped for time, but it was more, it wasn't so strenuous and crazy as usual.
I got the feeling from it. I don't know if you ever had the thought, but I was kind of like, geez, I kind of wish this was like a weekly TV series,
It could be, and I did have that in mind right from the start, that each one of those segments could make a half-hour story. And but it never happened, you know. It's hard to get anything on television now, mainstream, and it's got to be, you know, you look at some of these hour-long shows, and they have the production values of theatrical movies, you know, and I
Uh-huh.
can't afford that.
Right, right. Yeah, television has changed a lot. I'm just thinking of, you know, I'm a big fan of Tales from the Dark Side, the TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Later there was Monsters, and those shows would be on like Sunday night. Would make Sunday night another, you know, another monster movie night, and I really like that. And I like the format, and you know, and you could tell they had a smaller budget, and maybe you'd see the same refrigerator in different episodes, but that made it fun for me, you know.
I've been watching, binge watching the old Untouchable show, and every episode almost somewhere in an office or something is the same painting hanging on the wall, guy sitting on a horse. And in the old Dark Shadow show, the original series, there was an Afghan, which is like a blanket or a, you know, it's a handmade kind of thing, and it would turn up everywhere. It would turn up in people's offices, people's homes, different time periods, parallel time. You would always see that. And there was a painting on the wall that kept turning up. And I think it's Jesse James, but I'm not sure. But it's like a guy with a handlebar mustache and everything. And
Well, you know, one of the movies that received so much criticism was Tim Burton's Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp, and the fans they just you know rejected it. And I'm like, if you watch the original show, I mean, it wasn't intentional, but a lot of cheesy things happened. There was a famous The Fly was in there. I don't know why Tim Burton didn't put the
I know.
because
Oh my
there's a
goodness.
fly on Barnabas's face in the scene, Jonathan Frid, and then he's there, and then he does the natural thing and just brushes it off. But
And there's one episode of Dark Shadows where a guy shows up at the door of the mansion of Collingwood, and he says, "I'm here to see Mr. Jonathan," and he meant, you know, Barnabas.
oh yeah, well
They left it in because it would have cost too much to stop it and shoot it over.
yeah, I mean, they blew their line because they're basically shooting like us live, so they didn't have time to fix stuff.
Right.
And there was sometimes there'd be a flash and it'd show the room in the dark shadows, and there'd be a big television monitor in the shot.
Yeah.
And then the character Burke, one time, he's at the top of that stairway, and then he comes out the door, and all of a sudden he turns around and goes back in the door like he came out, but it was all on camera. So I'm like,
I remember that there's one too where you see Jonathan Frid gathering his clothes over the credits, the end credits.
oh yeah, he walked right across the credits one time. But that was the fun and charm of it. I got hooked on Dark Shadows when I was still in kindergarten, and then the terrible thing happened. Then I had to go to school all day. School got out at 3:15. Dark Shadows was on at 3. So if I ran home, I'd see the credits. You know.
Well, what I did, when, you know, I was so, you know, addicted to that show. That's when I was in that band, the Penny Arcade, that Mike Nesmith was producing. And we used to rehearse all day long, Monday through Saturday, actually. And he had a rehearsal room on one end of the house, and on the other side of the house, he had a bar with, you know, drinks and Slim Jims and all kinds of things. And he had a little TV on the bar. So around 4 o'clock when the show came on, I would say, hey, you guys thirsty? Want to maybe get some drinks? Okay. So I would run across the house, turn on the TV, watch about 5 minutes of it, then come back with the drinks and say, oh, how about if I get some snacks too? Then I would give me an excuse to go back to the bar, and I would see little bits and pieces of the show and try to figure out what was going on, all during that whole original run of that series. But it was great. It was fun. And seeing it for the first time, now you see the reruns and you know what's going to happen, you know, but then you didn't. Everything was a surprise.
I'd always catch it, you know, when I was summer and we were off school. The one thing, because I'm sure you're from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in Texas, but I grew up in Chicago.
Okay, because they had it was on Channel 7 out of Chicago. And then what they did, but somebody, you know, realized that the kids were drawn into Dark Shadows. So then after Dark Shadows, they started running the Hammer horror films, and that's how I got to see the Gorgon and all the Hammer, Dracula, and everything. And so that was the consolation prize for Missing Dark Shadows, is to see
Yeah.
both films.
Me being older than you, I got to see Shock Theater, which had a horror host named Marvin.
Mhm.
They were running mostly the Universals, but then when they kind of ran out of the Universal, they ran a few of the Columbias in between, and some of the RKOs like Son of Kong and the Body Snatcher and all that. But that show ran for 2 years, and it was extremely popular in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And, that's one of the only things I really miss about Chicago is the Shock Theater.
Well, now you wrote a book about the Chicago horror host scene, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Shock Theater, Chicago style, which was a takeoff on the term pizza Chicago style.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Well, Kenosha's very renowned for pizza as well. I'll let you know that. We got a lot of mom and pop shops here. But so what do you think the enduring popularity of the Frankenstein story, which it was popular right away, was a stage play within 6 months after she wrote it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Mary Shelley actually attended, and there's comments that have been preserved of her impression of feeling like she was a celebrity for the first time when she saw her play, the play version of her novel on stage. It's really amazing to me that those movies, the Universals especially, that were made over a half a century ago, are still popular today with kids and things. You still see that image, that famous with the electrodes on the neck and the square head. You see those turning up on lunch boxes and puzzles and things like that. All these years later, what else do you see from that period? Nothing. You don't see, I talk to actors, and they never heard of Clark Gable, never heard of Humphrey Bogart, they never heard of Laurel and Hardy or maybe Abbott Costello because of the Frankenstein movie, and they heard of the Three Stooges because they're still running those, on TV. But most of that whole period is wiped away from their memory. It's really sad.
Well,
The monsters keep coming back. The Wolfman, the Creature, Dracula.
Yeah, they were impressive, and of course the Universal take on Frankenstein went way beyond the book, and that just was a smash hit with all the machines and everything in the story, which I believe, maybe I'm wrong or right, the machines were actually contemporary equipment for that time period. I mean, it wasn't that movie was set in the time that it was made, wasn't it?
Yeah. Most people think that those movies take place like in the 1800s. They don't. They take place the same year they were made. But
right, like now.
But they couldn't call attention to too much things that were going on in the war because they're set like in Germany during World War II. So where are the Nazis? They're not going to bring them into it. They did in a couple, like the Invisible Agent. They brought that into the World War II situation. But they were like in this almost timeless Neverland somewhere in a pocket universe in Europe someplace, and that helped make them timeless because they don't date.
Right. That's a smart thing to do. That's just what I tell people when Hollywood or whoever who's made the mistake is that, if you got your astronauts in a spacesuit or a spaceship, make the equipment as abstract from anything real as possible, because as we've seen, especially like the Star Trek movies, and they have the bubble TVs on their consoles, and they're supposed to be, so many years in the future. They didn't anticipate flat screens. Of course, in the original Star Trek, their main view was a flat screen, but
well, you see a lot of old 1950s science fiction movies set in the future, and they've got reel-to-reel tape recorders and things like that.
I know.
And nobody even knows what a reel-to-reel tape recorder is, or a rotary phone. It's way in the future.
I know. Well, they didn't. I guess they probably didn't think that these movies would still be watched by generations, decades later. I always notice that what was always funny to me is I'm a big fan of the Time Machine with and there's a scene in there where he's all the way as far as he goes into the future with the Eloy, and they take him to that building where the discs are, the
Yeah.
talking discs, and in the background there's an oscilloscope, which I have several oscilloscopes.
Oh,
in
you
these
love
boxes.
those you love those oscilloscopes. Is that what you call them, oscilloscope?
Oh, I love them. I got them all over a haunted laboratory out at the farm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Another thing about those Universals that was, especially if you saw them in the theater. I saw some of those in the theater before they ever hit television. They were still being reissued by Real Art. There was I can't describe it. You have to be sitting there watching them, but there was like a mood, an atmosphere, with the fog and the black and white and all that. And I think that has a lot to do with their appeal. It's like this different world you're in when you're watching those.
It is sort of a fantasy world, and I always thought that when I watched Bride of Frankenstein and the monster runs away from the blind man's hut, it was almost as if he took a wrong turn, he might end up by the Tin Man and Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
There's, the Bride of Frankenstein is the Wizard of Oz of the Universal horror, I like to say. Well, that was really the best one, but did you venture out or even try to see that new Bride movie that
I haven't seen either of the two new Frankenstein.
okay, I haven't either.
Definitely would recommend Guillermo del Toro's Before the Bride, unfortunately.
Have you seen them?
I've seen both. Yes. I
Did you
love
like them?
Guillermo del Toro's version was amazing. I feel like as an appreciator of Frankenstein, you would love it. It's very true to the original story where they really try to bring the monster back to a human quality, give him that intelligence that he was imbued with in the book.
The one I'm really looking forward to seeing is the sequel to Godzilla -1.
Ooh,
Oh yeah. They're teasing about where there's a lot of talk about there would be another monster in there, and a little teaser with the in the G for that one. And I really would like to see, if it was up to me, I'd like to see him take the timeline back up from the 40s and have him come back in the 70s and do Hydra again, the smog monster, and be set in that period. Godzilla versus the smog monster has a real appeal.
That's what I heard rumors that it's going to be the smog monster.
Yeah, that's what they said, and then other people said it was going to be Ghidorah again. I'm like, come on, that's been done too much, But yeah, Ghidorah would be a good. Because imagine the CGI and with that director's vision, what a terrifying creature that could be.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, -1 was just fantastic, and Shin Godzilla is another one that's just.
I didn't particularly like Shin Godzilla that much. It was just too goofy for me. But
yeah, it's well, that's what the Japanese make some really out there movies sometimes, and Shin Godzilla was one of them. But I thought Shin Godzilla kind of had a little bit of a connection to Smog Monster, the Hedorah, where they were really trying to make a horror, even though that Godzilla was sort of the pollution monster. But there's even a little Easter egg. Nobody else gets it. I can't find the image. You know how I am with seeing stuff in movies, but there's like the big office room that's sort of in the beginning, and it's supposed to be sort of like abstract paintings of mountains. But one of them looks just like Hetero when he's on top of the cars in the original movie. And I'm like, come on, what's the chances of that being an accident,
Honestly.
I love Easter eggs.
Huh?
I love Easter eggs in movies. And in Tales of Frankenstein, I put a ton of them. The references sneaking here and there,
No, if we get back to your movie now, the first story has Lily Lev, who I had on the show, and I didn't realize till I got her on the air that she's Russian.
Yeah.
And that's such a kind of a twist of a turn of how that ends up. So I won't give it away, but I like that. I thought it was brilliant. And I like all of them. And,
Well, it's funny because when William Stromberg, who did our music score in that, he was watching a rough cut of the movie first. He wanted to see if he really wanted to do it or not. And he was watching that first story, and he got to the point where she strangles him. Dr. Frankenstein.
Uh-huh.
And he said, oh, this is just another cliche ending. The monster comes to life and kills the maker, and then faded out and faded in, and then you saw that whole extra ending with
Uh-huh.
the perfect male monster, and his brain is in it, and all this and that.
Uh-huh.
I like to let the viewers, kind of think for themselves and not spell everything out, and that's one of the differences between most low budget independent movies and real movies. If somebody is escaping in a car, let's say, or on a motorcycle, in a real movie, or a theatrical, a regular studio movie, they'll just kind of watch them go, and you're seeing them go, so they go. In the low budget movie, somebody will say, "There they go." It's like in the old comic books, the old DC science fiction comic books. I remember there was had one panel, and the panel showed a spaceship landing on a planet. And then on the caption at the top, it said, as the spaceship lands on the planet, and then there was like a dialogue balloon coming out of the spaceship where one of the astronauts is saying, we are landing on the planet in our spaceship. So you get beat over the head with it 3 times. And all you have to do is show the spaceship landing.
Well, it's funny because I remember people watching like 50 sci-fi movies, and the whole rocket lands on the planet, and we'd be like, well, what little they knew, about space flight. But now, as you see, the rocket is landing, the full rocket. Elon Musk's rockets are landing that way. I don't think the current moon mission is going to. They're going to do the old capsule coming down like the old days, but. It's just interesting with the sci-fi stuff and the movies, and of course the legacy of Frankenstein. So many interpretations. Frankenstein meets the space monster, which wasn't really anything like a real Frankenstein movie, but it's fun. So, what would be your favorite non-Korolev Frankenstein movie?
The what?
A non-Boris Karloff Frankenstein.
Oh, non-Karloff. Well. I really like Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman.
Yeah.
I saw a few years ago House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula in 35 millimeter on a big screen. And I've always preferred House of Frankenstein. But seeing them on a big screen, House of Dracula has a much more cohesive story.
Right. It is.
There's a lot of plot holes in House of Frankenstein that.
Oh yeah, there is.
Like the Chamber of Horrors exhibit. Well, first of all, how did they get all that stuff in that one wagon?
I know.
Okay, but assuming they did, and they did in the movie, and they set it up, opening night, everybody goes. Then he revives Dracula, and about an hour later, Dracula's in the carriage, and he goes to the wine, and then about an hour after that, he's escaping from the police, and the mad doctor and the hunchback have already packed all that stuff back up, and they're ready to leave. Wouldn't you would think they would want to have the show running for a couple nights at least? But if they're going to do that, why get rid of their primo exhibit right from the get-go? There's a lot of stuff like that. Why does he wait until the moon is full to decide to operate on the Wolfman?
That movie is something. And then he's got all these different brains that he's going to switch around.
Yeah, they're all going in the wrong places,
Yeah. I don't think the brain was ever taken out of the monster.
Oh no, they never get that far.
I know, so that means it's still Bella's. It's Igor's brain.
And you know what else is, which I didn't notice until recently, and I've seen that movie 100 times or something. There's a scene where Boris Karloff, is the mad doctor, rides into town to kidnap the 2 guys he's going to do the brain transplant on. And if you look over at the right, at the end of the street, there's this huge spray of water shooting up in the air from behind the building and landing. What's going on there? What are they doing? What are they just cleaning the street?
Someone crashed into
Or
a
they're
bike.
shooting another movie over there.
Yeah, well, those were the later period, Frankenstein films were like the B picture for a bigger
Yeah.
movie maybe. And, but,
They were made for kids, really. The ones
Yeah.
in the 30s were made for adults.
right, well,
And then,
yeah. You can see the road to Herman Munster was clearly paved. But you know, you go back to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and every time I see someone put a picture up on Facebook or social media of Bela Lugosi as the monster, you know the comments are coming where the criticism, you know.
yeah.
You know, the script didn't follow the original idea and whatever, but I always say, ask a kid to talk like Dracula. He'll do Bela Lugosi. Ask him to walk like Frankenstein. He'll do Bela Lugosi because Karloff didn't do the stiff arm thing. That was Lugosi because he was playing a blind monster.
Yeah. Well, when I saw those movies the first time, I saw all the ones except the ones with Karloff in theaters. And I saw the first ones I saw were House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula on a triple bill with The Mummy at the Mode Theater in Chicago, which we used to call the Mold Theater because it was a real sleazy rundown.
I know the type.
But it was real cheap and you got to see a lot of movies cheap. Anyway, so my first exposure to the monster was Glenn Strange. And I thought he really looked great, you know, I mean, he looked powerful and strong.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next time I saw a Frankenstein movie, it was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And it was at the Biograph Theater in Chicago where Dillinger was shot, and John Dillinger, the gangster. And it was on a triple bill. What a triple bill this was. Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and Man-Made Monster, which was then called The Atomic Monster. It was a reissue. They wanted to make it sound more 1950s, you know. Anyway, I was standing in line, and to my left was the lobby cards for the movie. And there was one of Lugosi, and I said to my friend, "There's something wrong with the monster. He doesn't look, he looks weak." And then I saw the picture of Gil Perkins holding the girl, you know, and I said, "Oh no, he looks okay. That looks great." It was a totally different person, but that was the first time I'd seen that movie in the theater. Then after that I saw Ghost of Frankenstein on a double bill at the Mode again, and on a double bill with Green Hell, which is a James Whale movie, using the sets that they finally used later in The Mummy's Hand. And then they all went to television. And then I saw the Karloffs and you know, the Ape Woman, the Invisible Man movies. And I saw Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein in the theater too, before it hit television. And that was great seeing that on a big screen.
Oh, absolutely. My first Frankenstein movie was Karloff, the original one. Before they started WGN Creature Features in Chicago, on Valentine's Day, they ran Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein together in the time slot. And then was shortly after that they announced Creature Feature was going to come on.
Well, speaking of Bride in Chicago, long after, you know, years after I moved to California, I was dating a girl who came out from Chicago, and we got married in Chicago. I was briefly married, you know, a day that lived in infamy. Anyway, I had a friend who was the program manager at WGN, and so he scheduled Bride of Frankenstein on my wedding the night I got married. So I, thinking ahead, I got a little television set. I brought it into the reception hall and I put it on the bar so people could watch Bride of Frankenstein if they didn't like the music or whatever at the wedding. But I also, and I don't know how I got away with this, on the wedding cake, I had the two model kits, the Aurora kits, the monster on one side and the bride on the other side. And, you know, all of Linda, my wife's relatives would walk by and go, "Well, look at what is that?" All my relatives would go, "Oh, it just dawned." But finding that bride kit, even then, this was 1972. December 30th, 1972. So I got the tax break for that year. Anyway, I was visiting the set of the original Svengoolie show in Chicago because a friend of mine was doing the makeup. I'm Jerry. Yeah. And two of the guests on the show were two guys who owned a local magic shop in Chicago, which was in walking distance of where I was staying, where my mom lived, you know. And we were talking. So he said, "Why don't you come down to the shop?" You know, so a friend of mine went down to the shop, and we're talking. It was, you know, one of these shops that had magic tricks and masks and puzzles and things like that. And at the time, I was looking for the bride kit, and it had already been discontinued by that time. So it was easy to find the monster, the one with where he's walking on the grave, you know, but finding the bride was like impossible. So I'm talking to my friend and I said, "Oh, it looks like I'm never going to find that bride kit." And the guy behind the counter who I met on the Svengoolie show, "Oh, are you looking for the Bride of Frankenstein model kit? I know where there's still several copies for sale." And he told me about this, like it was like a thrift shop somewhere. So the next day I went down to the thrift shop and I bought it. It was like 39 cents or 40 cents or $1 or something like that. And I wish I had bought them all because they, you know, on eBay, they go for a fortune now. And
Yeah,
I still have those two, even though I'm long divorced, you know, I saved those two kits that I had on the wedding cake and they're in my house on display.
I never knew there was a Bride of Frankenstein, and I had all of them. The first one I bought was Frankenstein. I bought Dracula the next day. Then I bought the Wolfman, and then I didn't know there was a Godzilla kit or Kong. And then all of a sudden they just showed up one day in the square boxes like a reissue. And those were huge. And then they, of course, then they had the dinosaur kits, Aurora, and then that monster scenes rated X for excitement, where I had the Vampirella model. My mom was like, "I don't know if you should have it."
I don't know why they discontinued the bride. Either, I can think of two reasons. One is Elsa Lanchester sued them, but which I never heard that. And the other is maybe it just wasn't selling because it was a girl, you know. And
right, and it was a smaller kit, like the witch. She's kind of miniature, you know. The witch does not fit in with Frankenstein. It's their size. She'd be too tiny.
Well, the bride kit wasn't easy because it had all these little intricate gadgets and things that you had to attach and everything.
Yeah, that was a complex kit.
So I had my wife, my future ex-wife, I had her make the bride kit because she was an artist, and I didn't want to be bothered. You know, I like to just cut to the chase and be done with it. But she really enjoyed putting all those little things together. You know, before those kits came out, I remember like they were testing the waters with Superman and Superboy, and before that they had knights. You know, knights of the round.
I remember the knight kits, yes.
With swords and lances and armor and all this sort of thing. So they was like gradually wanting to see if they could sell something besides airplanes and cars, you know, which were the big plastic model kit thing back then. And so if one sold maybe this and maybe take it to the next step, you know, and
there you go. So obviously the whole Universal monster genre lives on forever. They're still seen. I always try to get my haunters interested at the haunted house, but they don't seem to take interest. I'm like, these are the building blocks for horror. The original, the first run, and then of course the later period in the Universal films where they, where we got House of Frankenstein. And I agree with you. House of Dracula is a lot more solid. Maybe they were trying harder because that was really it was almost seems like they made that as the farewell to the series.
Yeah.
But then of course we got Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and when Karloff wouldn't do it, he wouldn't do the monster, but then he was going to do it for that. What was it? The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
But they didn't use his scenes.
And then he did Route 66. That Route 66 television show, he did the monster on that too.
Oh, yeah, right. But the one for the other one that they didn't use, he looked pretty much like the his original Frankenstein. But
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
think
I went,
Abbott and Costello probably helped the Universal monsters way more than it hurt it.
yeah, yeah. And it also helped Abbott Costello because most of those old comedians, the movies, people don't remember anymore. They remember the names, but they remember Abbott and Costello because of the Frankenstein monster, Wolfman, and Dracula.
Right.
And that's what's keeping that alive. But they don't really know the older other Abbott Costello movies. I mean, there's so many movies.
Yeah, there's so many. I never get the I never appreciated him as much as I liked Abbott and Costello. He's Frankenstein, but of course you had Cheney, you had the monster, even though it wasn't Karloff, but we had seen him before. And then of course I think really the cherry on the cake was Lugosi reprising Dracula.
Yeah,
That made that film solid.
yeah. And they didn't want to hire him originally. I guess they had problems. Ever since they had the problems with him and Frankenstein was the Wolfman, he was a persona non grata at Universal, and his agent really had to, get really, really pushy to get him that gig.
Okay. Well, I think we might be running out of time, so we'll have to wrap it up. We're planning on we had to talk to you about maybe showing the Tales of Frankenstein for a small audience in Kenosha, and I'll keep you updated about that. And any final words for Frankenstein fans everywhere?
Okay, well, thank you for having me on. It's good to see you in person and meeting the rest of your cast here.
Okay, thanks for being on. Good to talk to you again.
Okay, you too.